That means it means that I was growing. What?
Recording in progress.
So seriously, up for 15 years of my career, every year was a record year. That means I would grow a little bit. I made more money than I did the previous year. Guess what my perspective of real estate was? I mean, you ought to always be making more money, right? So now, right, reverse that. If you got into business in 2018, even 2017, 2018, 2019, or something somewhere in there, you've probably experienced something similar. Every year is a record year. There just seems to be more business out there. Don't really have to go chase it. It just kind of shows up. It always has until it doesn't.
And some of those conversations were easier to have because we had sellers that had all this equity and they were going to deal with multiple offers. And so there was still a strategy conversation in there, but it wasn't, hey, I need you to prepare that your house is going to be on the market a little bit longer. We're going to start here. If it doesn't, if we don't sell in this amount of time, we're going to be looking at a price reduction. These are the houses you're competing with. You know, your weekly phone calls of, hey, we need to talk about price. We need to talk about feedback. Those conversations we just haven't had to have. We've managed buyer emotions. You've been writing multiple offers for buyers. You've been managing that buyer emotion, but still we've managed up until these past 6 months or so, we were selling the same number of units last year. Our units really just started to decline this year, which tells us that the market is shifting. So even in all that emotion, for the most part, buyers were able to find houses. It was just that the market was moving really fast. And what happens when we all start moving fast? We stop having some of the conversations that we probably should have. When's the last time any of you did a buyer consult? One of you. But you know, we got away a little bit from, I was always taught it was a needs analysis, whether in my position of recruiting or in your position of a buyer consult, that one of the goals in that was really getting a deep understanding of our clients' needs. And this isn't just for buyers.
Well, yeah. And I think the summary of it for me is that we became transactional, right? There's a period of time when you're relational because you have to be in order to cultivate the buyer, in order to cultivate the seller, you got to go love on them. The last several years have been such that I don't have to love on anybody. Business just kind of shows up. I can love them and leave them. And
your value was, I'm going to get you in first. We're going to have the offer ready. I know how much we need to escalate. That was your biggest value proposition, is speed.
Yeah.
And we've moved, they say, you know, we've moved into a skill-based market, and part of that skill that we have to brush up on is our communication.
Well, and to be fair, most of the skill that I've been trying to keep up on is how do I keep to speed, right? So my goal is to get the speed back, and build my skills around getting the speed back. Guess what? It's not coming back, right? I mean, we're not going to see that speed market again. So this is the shift into what's the skill sets that we need to put together in order to thrive. In 25, I still don't like that phrase.
Yeah, it feels like a really long.
Have you?
You'll be like almost 60 by then. Just kidding.
Side note is Gary Keller came up with it, right? And he started talking about Thrive in 25. Have you heard this? We got a mega camp, and they're promoting Thrive in 25. Do you know what that means? It means we're not expecting another really great market until 2025. Scary. It means we're just at the very beginning stage probably of this slowdown. So that's a little bit scary to me. I don't know if it is to you, but share my fear, please.
Share my fear. Make me feel better. One of the things that we have to get really good at before we communicate with clients is finding motivated people. In the past few years, all the motivated people just raise their hands and say, okay, me. I want to sell my house because I know that my neighbor got this much and this much, and I just need you to find me a house to buy. And so we had a lot more clients raising their hands saying, they're interested in taking advantage of a good market.
Well, so, and here's where this problem of speed and motivation, right, kind of cross over. Because remember, I'm in this speed market. So I'm used to, I'm going to go show a house, go write an offer, maybe have multiple offers. I'm going to list my house and maybe have multiple offers. And I'm thinking speed. So when somebody raises their hand and says, I want to go buy a house, what do? I go the speed route. I go show them one house and I go, okay, you ready to write an offer? I brought the contract with me. And what do? Oh, well, we don't like the carpet. So yeah, maybe not this one.
Or they match your speed and then 48 hours later they call you and go,
Or
I think
worse,
we screwed up.
or worse, yeah, they match your speed and just don't want to write an offer anywhere near what it's going to take to purchase the house, right? So that is not a problem with the buyer. It is a problem with us and our determining motivation.
So in one of the ways that that we find motivated people is back to the relationships that when you all remember when COVID hit and we did daily shift calls, and every day for 30 minutes you got on a Zoom call like this. The first time we were all on a Zoom call, we were all at our houses and all we talked about was care calls. Check in on your people. How are they doing? Are they working from home? Did they lose their jobs? Are they furloughed? Do they have family members sick? Are they struggling mentally being at home without, any socialization? Our whole world shifted to care calls. Just love on your people and help them because we figured that real estate, we were going to struggle to transact. And we kind of have to go back to that mentality in this market to find motivated people. Remember, the main reasons people will always move is marriages, divorces, kids, empty nesting, change in jobs. Somebody may have gotten a job or lost a job. And so all of those things in life are still happening.
And that still happens on a 7 to 10 years, you have a major life change, right? So there is a rhythm to it. There's a reason that's the average people stay in their houses.
I was listening to a podcast the other day and this agent was talking about just that, like understanding where all of the people in her database are now that we're out of COVID. And if they still love their house, their job, if both people are working, have they had more kids, are schools, all of those things. And in reaching out to somebody in her database, she's like, oh, we need to sell an investment property. She's like, okay, cool. What made you want to sell your investment property? And she's like, oh, my in-laws live there and they're going to go into assisted living. And she's like, oh, okay. And she's like, yeah, we just really need to get this done fast. And she was like, well, why do you need to get it done so quickly? Do you need the money out of it? Or like, what's your motivation in getting this done quickly? And she's like, actually, my husband just told me that he wants a divorce and now my in-laws don't want to live in a house that we both own. So we need to make this happen fast. And her point in that was like, had they just said, hey, we bought an investment property with you and we're looking to sell it. And she's like, great, I'll send, because all that client asked for was comps. And she's like, great, I'll send you comps. And had she just stopped there, her speed told her, send them comps, let's get it listed before the market turns anymore. Let's get it listed, get it on the market, get it sold for them. But because she took the time to go a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper, she found out that there was a whole lot more emotional support this client was going to need in this transaction that was going to keep that relationship going. And it actually turned into 4 houses that they needed to sell that they certainly could have taken to somebody else. But because she had been such a good friend kind of during that time, she got all 4 of those listings.
What's interesting as you're talking about that, right? You started that conversation talking about your database. And here's somebody going through their database, going through the names one by one and determining what is the conversation I need to have with this person or what do they need? We've gotten so used to this smart plan mentality, right? Which is I have 1,000 names in my database and I talk to each one of them exactly the same way. And I don't ever stop to think about what does this individual need or what does this specific relationship feel like. That feels like it takes too much time. Certainly takes a lot of energy. So what would I rather do? Put them on a smart plan and just treat them all generically. And that may not be the best method moving forward in the next 18 months.
Especially because you have to assume that there are 3 or 4 or 5 other realtors doing the same thing. Yeah. They're not just on your smart plan. They're on 4 or 5 smart plans. One of the the bold laws that happens to be right in the middle of that wall, jumped out at me as I was thinking about this. And it is logic makes you think, emotion makes you act. And I think we've operated, as much as there's been emotion in buyers over the last few years, there's been a lot more logic in sellers, because there was equity in the market, and it was like, hey, this was just an opportunity for you. I mean, Tania considered selling her house just because, oh, the market's good and you might as well give it a shot. There were a lot of people like that said, hey, if I could sell my house and get this for it, I'd move.
She should have. Why didn't
It
you?
was.
Sorry, I didn't. The horns just came out. I shouldn't have asked.
But there was a lot of logic on the seller side. And as the market shifts, those roles will kind of shift, and sellers are going to become a little bit more emotional because they're going to have the expectations of the market over the last few years. If the buyers have the expectation of the last few years as the market shifts, they're going to be pleasantly surprised, because it's going to start getting easier for buyers. And so our ability to manage those expectations, those emotions, and what their motivation and their needs really are is what's going to make us successful. A lot of the top teams right now that I follow a couple of them from Mega Camp and just, watch their social media. A couple of them have podcasts and things. They are so far into scripts and practicing with their team on how they talk to people, because keep in mind, 80% of their teams have not operated in this market. So I found it wildly uncomfortable when I came to Keller Williams and started learning about communication, going 2 to 3 questions deep with somebody. Obviously, I do it more on the agent side, and some of you have experienced this with me, but when we sit down and talk, BJ is the master of this. Like, he's not going to answer any of your questions. He's just going to answer it with another question. And there's a reason for that. Part of it is it puts you in tune with your own motivations and makes you say them out loud. What's important to you about this? Okay, well, why, if we sell it in this amount of time, how does that make you feel? What does that do for you? All of those motivating questions need to come back, because when the market's hard, you're going to need that motivation to remember. You said it was important to you that you needed to sell this house by winter so that you could spend your first winter in Florida, or whatever it is. You're going to need to revert back to that emotion to keep them on track through the transaction. Hopefully that helps some of the buyer's remorse that we're experiencing right now. But knowing when your database is the word I'm trying to think of, knowing when your database is going to transact is the word I was looking for. You need to know that before they do. And so if you don't know what's going on with them, that is your homework for the next few months, is until you can get all the way through your database and know what's going on with them and how life is. This is your homework. The smart plans are still important. Like, I don't want to get away from knowing your monthly newsletters, all of your marketing videos, your social media posts, all of those are important. This is just the market that brings back the personal touch we've gotten away from. I don't
want to get too high on that, but as you're talking, all I can think of is that, okay, how am I going to do that? Right. I mean, that feels, it feels overwhelming to me to be able to go pick through 1,000 or more names in a database and go, seriously, I'm going to go through each one of these and try to figure out what each person needs. And
the reality is most of you have databases of less than 300 people. And it doesn't mean that you only know.
Thanks for poking me in the eye.
But like, if you want to know where to start with the people that are in your database. You all have people in your database because you've had to put them into command in order to get paid since, I don't know, 3 years ago. So you at least have 3 years of data. So whether you start with your pipeline and just go talk to maybe your buyers that got kind of cold on you over the last year, or decided to sit and wait, renew leases, stay put in their house, remodel a kitchen, whatever.
So I'm going to go back to this because it's still stuck on me. So, okay, 300, let's say most of us have 300. In theory, I could take 10 a day for the next 30 days. So for the month of September, I could take 10 names a day and have one piece of communication with each person, with 10 people every day out of the database, people that I already know that and that know me. And that's it.
So when you call them, what are you going to say? How many of you have heard the acronym FORD? Does anybody remember what it stands for? BJ.
Family, occupation, recreation, and what's the D?
Dreams.
And dreams.
Those are the things people always want to talk about. What?
Divorce.
Divorce.
Nobody's dreaming even of that.
Family, occupation, recreation, divorce. No, dreams. But when you're talking to somebody in your database and you have that kind of phone anxiety of not knowing what to say.
Well, I'll be honest with you, right? If I haven't talked to you for a year or you closed 3 years ago, 5 years ago, right? I mean, there's people in my database I haven't talked to for a really long time. I'm not going to call you and ask you about, oh, hey, Megan, I haven't talked to you for a long time. How's your family?
Why don't you take, if you haven't talked to him in 5 years, why don't you take your home anniversaries from this month 5 years ago and call those people and say, hey, I'm really sorry I haven't talked to you in 5 years, but do you realize it's been 5 years since you bought your house? Why don't you just own that you were a shitty agent for a second and apologize and then say, hey, my fault, but how are you? How's your family? Do you still have the same job? If it's been 5 years, they could have a different job. They could have like made a lot of kids in that time. They could have.
The introductory script, I think, is exactly that. Is the, hey, oh my gosh, I was looking through this stuff. I can't believe you've been there 8 years already. Congratulations. Ready for a new one?
Yep.
Alternatively, there's probably a whole bunch of people in my database that I didn't sell their houses.
Tons.
So
same thing. You don't have to, you just don't open with, hey, can you believe it's been 5 years? I mean, you can call and tell them, call and just ask them how they're doing. If they're in your database, keep in mind, a person in your database is someone that will pick up the phone and talk to you if you call them. These are not names. There's a difference between a database and a pond. So let's first define those two. A pond are leads that came in. Maybe they were Zillow, Realtor.com, Facebook ad campaigns. These are not people that know, like, and trust you. These are people that came to you from a lead source and were maybe communication fell off. That's a pond. Put them on a smart plan, call them, keep it business, introduce yourself as a real estate agent. You're checking in on them. If they don't tell you to pound sand, put them on a smart plan and check in on them a little bit later. We're talking about people that know, like, and trust you. People that are going to answer the phone when you call and say, hey, Tania, how are you? Maybe they're going to say, I haven't talked to you in a long time. What's up?
Or they find.
Oh, you need a box.
stalk them on Facebook.
And find reason to call them. I will not call somebody and say, just to shoot the shit. I'm sorry. I will not call somebody and say, hey, how's it going? Because when they say fine, that's about it. So like I need a reason. So if they are on social media, another good way is to stalk them a little bit, see what's going on in their life, and then call them about that.
So that's fair.
Keep in mind,
Back to school.
Yeah.
oh my gosh, what's her name? That did a call with us last fall, all about Facebook. Keep in mind, like, all those people that you're Facebook friends with, that you don't ever see anything on their Facebook, Rachel Adamsley, yep. Go and comment on those people's posts. Go, if you don't want to pick up the phone and talk to them, start interacting with them through social media.
Go where they're with me for a minute. Is that as good?
It's not, but if you haven't talked to them in a while, and then all of a sudden.
It's
you call them
softer.
and comment on the baby, they're gonna be like, who are you? You know?
Yeah.
So.
The-
like,
You mean,
It's a way to ease back into that relationship. I think I use social media messages for that a lot. For people that I just haven't talked to in a while, but they posted something that I have some common ground with. Sometimes a social media message is more appropriate. I'm not picking up the phone and being like, oh my gosh, I saw that you canned this weekend. What's this recipe? I'm canning a lot right now, so it's, it's on my mind. So, but I would send them a social media message, and it's just a way to connect with them. It's a way to get back into their algorithm. So we got a little off topic with that, but I do agree. If picking up the phone and talking to someone is uncomfortable, start somewhere. Our goal is just to make as many connections right now with our database as possible. But it's also a good time to go through and audit your database. If you have a database of, you're like, oh, I have 1,000 people and I'm not getting anything out of my database, but only 100 of those people would pick up the phone, and answer if you called, you probably have a different problem. It's more an issue of the quality of your database than the quantity. So we need to understand who's in our database. But once somebody has raised their hand and said, okay, maybe I want to move, I might be interested. Like BJ said, our first instinct is go get them out, go start looking at houses and write up an offer. Hey, the market's moving fast. You need to talk to a lender. We might be in multiple offers. We have 3 hours to make this decision. We have a 10-minute showing. Here we go.
I think it's two, right? So yes, I tend to go, okay, we're going to go for speed. We're going to go, we got to find you a house today and we got to write an offer on it tonight because it's going to sell tomorrow. And so, right. So I move towards speed really, really fast. And sometimes that kills the deal. More often than not, in the seller's world today, what do? I have the conversation with somebody that says, oh, well, we've thought about selling our house because you can get so much money for it today, but we're not quite ready. And so what do? I immediately write them off and go, screw it. Remember, I'm about speed. So I want the guy that's motivated, that's ready to sell tomorrow, and screw those people. I'll just, you'll find me when you're ready, right? And what do? They go find somebody else when they're ready. I know none of you do that.
How many of you have had an awesome, maybe you just ran into them somewhere at a sporting event or at the grocery store or whatever. Somehow you had an awesome conversation with somebody and then you just genuinely forgot to follow up and you see a sign in their yard from somebody else a couple months later. I mean, it's happened to all of us. So don't trust that you're just going to remember who you need to follow up with. That needs to be something that goes into your database. Database would be ideal. I don't care if it's a list that you carry around with you every day, but don't trust yourself to remember. If you follow this and you're making 10 contacts a day, to remember 10 different conversations and know that you're going to reach out to somebody and they're going to call you back 4 hours later or the next day, or they're going to text you back, or those conversations may take place over the course of days. So have somewhere that you keep notes so that so something doesn't fall through the crack like that. But your goal, I don't remember what agent, this came from an agent in Keller Williams and I don't remember who it was, but she's a big agent on scripts and how you talk to people. And she always told her team, I don't know why she chose this acronym because it really isn't easy to remember, but it's the letters LPT, MAMA, MAMA. So these are the things that you should be able to get out of one conversation with somebody that says, I may want to buy or sell.
LPT Mama.
LPT Mama.
Okay.
Okay. L is location. Somebody sends you a listing and says, I want to go see this house. Do you just go, okay, showing at 1 o'clock today? Or do you ask them what's important about this location? Because you may find out they're like, oh, I don't actually like this location. I like this house. And so maybe we'll be willing to give up location. We'd really like to be in this area. But if you don't ever ask what is it about this location that you like or don't like?
Tell me you've not shown a house and because people just go, oh, because I wanted to see it, right? It's not in the right school district, but we just wanted to see it. It looked really great. I've done it. Right.
I got a good reminder last week. We're not Uber drivers. Our job is not to drive people from house to house so that they can see the inside in real life instead of on Zillow. Our job is to lead them through a transaction, and your leadership starts with the very first conversation you have with them. So location is the L.
PT Mama, that's what we have left.
Price. Especially in this market, in a lot of places, things are still going over list price. So if you know that a house is going to go over list price and they want to go see it and they're only pre-approved for that amount, you need to have a conversation with them that, hey, it's likely that this house is going to go over list price. And the highest you can go is.
And there's a challenge in showing that also, right?
Right.
So there is a script that lives in there that says, I would hate to show you a house that you're going to fall in love with and you're not able to purchase. It will do more harm than good.
Yep.
Okay, T Mama.
Timing. Sometimes the timing is your best gauge of motivation. If they're like, yeah, our lease is up in February. We just want to get a feel for the market. Great. You can do that online. You can go to open houses, but we're not Uber drivers. So we're not showing people houses that can't buy until January or February because.
But aren't I going to lose the relationship then?
If the entire relationship is driving them around and showing them houses, then yes.
I mean, they're going to call Adam to see that house. If I don't show that to him, Adam's going to show him.
That depends on how the quality of this conversation that you're having right here. They also have to understand that they're going to go out and fall in love with this house. Same thing that if they can't afford it, if they can't buy it right now, don't go out and fall in love with something that you can't buy. If you just want to get an idea of the inside of houses, go to open houses. And then that's on you to have enough of a relationship with them. Hey, you told me you were going to go to this open house yesterday. What did you think of it? Did you like the house? Keep in touch with them, but it doesn't mean you have to go physically spend your time showing them houses if they are not an active buyer. So timing. You also need to understand what is attached to their timing. Is it a lease? Is it that they have a house in another town that has already sold? Does it depend on a job or a baby coming? Or you need to understand what emotion is tied to that timing. If they just say, oh, we'd like to move in the next 60 days, don't check the T off your list and say, all right, got it. This is when you ask one more question and say, okay, what happens in 60 days in your life that makes your timing 60 days? Motivation. So hopefully after you get location, price, and timing, you've started to get into motivation and why they're having this conversation. How motivated are they? This makes them a warm, cold, hot buyer, based on what their motivation is. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, the first A, are they already represented?
Don't ask.
Please ask.
And then you can work with them. If you don't ask.
Please ask.
Liz is dying over here.
Yeah. This is like, I learned that we can't do that. You need to be asking if they're already represented, because we've been moving so fast. I know Tracy and I have both run into issues where somebody's client either goes with another agent, and our first question is, do you have a buyer agency agreement? So this goes on both sides.
And the answer is, oh no, I haven't signed anything yet.
No, I do those just for compliance right before closing.
You do, obviously, and this is a little side note, right? But you do run into a problem when they say, well, we've been working with Tania, but we haven't signed anything. You have a choice at that point. Are you going to say, hey, clearly there's a relationship here, or there's no legal relationship here, and therefore they're fair game? I'll let you choose.
If there is something signed, there's nothing that you can do. Unless they terminate that relationship with their agent, there is absolutely no point in you showing anyone a house that has a signed agreement with another agent, ever, period. If they want, I had this happen maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't know. I don't think the agent's on this call. But they had somebody call them and say, I saw this house with this agent and they offended me. So I'd like for you to write it up, and I don't have anything signed. Then we get into what we all learned about that's called procuring cause. You still owe it to that agent to pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, it looks like this person doesn't want to write up this offer with you. They've asked me to write it up. Can we split it? Can I pay you a referral fee? Because in a case of arbitration, procuring cause will come up. So just because they don't have anything signed, if that agent is the one that connected them to that house, we can still be in a gray area. So just do the right thing. Do unto others as you want done to yourself, or whatever. So if you feel like you need to pick up the phone and call an agent, or you need to encourage that buyer to have a conversation with their agent, do that. Keep in mind, your co-op relationships are just as important as your client relationships. So A, already represented. The second M is money, mortgage, money, whatever you want to call it. Have they met with a bank? Do you need to connect them with a lender? What are they pre-approved for? Have they even started that process? Can they buy a house?
Something that shows up when you get these financing pre-approvals. Let's say your buyer's pre-approved to 200,000 and you start showing them houses for 200,000. What happens in this market? I'm not speaking to you, Lucinda. I'm just speaking in general. But right from experience, we know that, right? I mean, if the house is going to sell for 210 or 225, it might put my buyer out of the range. It might. And so we got to be aware of that moving in as we get into showing houses, as we get into that motivation conversation about how much are you going to spend?
Yep. The last one is appointment. How often do you have a great conversation with somebody and you don't close? Every time we meet with a client, we should close with the next time we're going to meet with them, communicate with them, whatever that looks like. This is what you can expect of me. I'm going to call you in a couple of days. You're going to get an email from me in an hour. We're going to meet next week, whatever that looks like. We should always, always, always close at the end of that conversation.
I would say that goes beyond. It's easy for me to relate appointment with, hey, we're going to go see this house at 12 o'clock tomorrow, or I'll follow up with you in 30 days to see what was happening. I understand those. There's another side of this close and appointment though, when we're talking to our database. So if you do happen to make that phone call that says, hey, I can't believe it's been 5 years. You've been living there. I hope everything's great and everything it's all you wanted it to be. The next close can be, who's keeping you informed of the real estate values in your neighborhood? Would you be interested in getting an email every time something sells, every time something comes on the market, or whatever, right? So these are the automated emails that you can put them on that creates this action step between us. What's the next step in our relationship? So you do always have to be ahead of it.
And there's not appointment, like BJ said, it doesn't always mean the same thing. For the case I told you about with this woman that's like, oh, my husband wants a divorce. That might be a, hey, why don't we get coffee? We can talk through everything that you need and how I can help you. And that's probably a face-to-face conversation. So we have to know when to close and how to close. And that's just as important as asking for whatever that next thing is. Because if they say, hey, we're probably 6 months out, your better answer is great. Who's keeping you informed about the real estate market right now? I'll check in with you every couple of weeks, every month, whatever. If you're like, hey, let's get coffee tomorrow, they're going to be like, that feels weird. So make sure that your response is appropriate to what is going on. Be sensitive that if it is an emotional situation, if their motivation is connected to something emotional, you probably need to get face-to-face with them. Understanding when to close. I think something I've learned a lot in the past 4 or 5 years is reading people's body language. And I think it's something that we don't do nearly enough of. I can look through the room right now and tell you just by body language who's paying attention, who's not, who's interested, who's not.
You know how you get somebody's attention though if they're not paying attention?
What?
You say their name. I won't do it to her. I'm sorry.
But think about how much information you get from people's body language. And there is no other way to do that than face-to-face. So we cannot or should not service our clients without getting face-to-face with them early in our relationship. As soon as they say, I might be interested in buying or selling, the best thing we can do is get face-to-face, because all of those questions that they're going to answer, you're going to get a lot more information from their body language and just the way that they talk, especially somebody like me. I talk with my hands.
Yeah, I know you've been in my personal space all morning.
Oh, please. But you're going to get so much more information from me if you're sitting across from me and you can see whether I'm excited about something. You can see my facial expression. You can see my body language. You can see how straight I'm sitting, or if I'm just like, oh my God, they're just not my house.
I get that that's not always possible, but follow through on this, right? So let's go back to this. I'm calling somebody that I sold to 5 years ago. Hey, can't believe it's been 5 years, Melissa. How's everything going? And everything's great and whatever else. I want to get to the point where I can get you something of value, right? And I'm going to relate it back to real estate. So I'm going to be like, who's been informing you of real estate values in your neighborhood? I don't know, but my house is worth so much more than it was 5 years ago. You know what, Melissa? Would it be helpful if I actually put together a packet, and brought it over to you so you could see exactly what it's worth? I'm talking about doing a CMA. Why would I not offer to do a CMA for somebody, even though they have no desire to sell? I'm just trying to give you a baseline for what I think your house is worth today. I can show you what a great job I did 5 years ago getting you this great deal. And now it's worth so much more, but that gives me the opportunity to be face to face.
Yeah.
That's a better answer to me than the, hey, let me just send you an email.
Right. CMAs can be treated as pop buys.
Yeah.
You know, that can be a 10-minute, a 5-minute. Hey, this is all the information you're going to find in here. Let me know if you have any questions. You don't need to sit down and do some formal presentation. You could use CMAs as pop buys. And that costs you, you get 100 free black and white copies every month. That costs you nothing.
Black and white, no color. Don't.
Hey, if you want to spend 15 cents. I also think it's important that we talk to them as you're talking to somebody that's interested in buying and selling, and you're talking to them about the process. You talk to them as if they're already your client. So I'm going to send you the information for a lender. You're going to reach out to them. They'll get you through the pre-approval process, and then we'll go out. We'll start looking at houses. This is, even if they haven't yet said, I want to work with you, talk about them as if they are your client already. It seems like a very small detail, but they feel like you already care enough to talk about them like they're yours. There's just that extra level of customer service that they feel when they hear you talk about how you're going to service the transaction.
Yeah.
So talk about them as if they're already yours. Share the next steps. How often do you guys go to the doctor? This popped in my head because this happened to me within the last year. You go to the doctor and they like do blood work, and then you leave and they don't tell you anything. Like, when do I get this back? Do I have to come back and see the doctor?
Unless it's bad, they're not calling you, right?
Right. And they just don't tell you anything. So you have no idea what the next steps are. And so don't do that to your clients. They should always know when they wrap up a conversation with you what to expect from you next. And then you're on the hook to do it. But they should always know what the next steps are. Keep in mind, we do this every day. I fell into this in construction all the time. I would always feel like I was just going into an insane amount of detail with clients because it was things I said and dealt with every day. But it's things they do a handful of times in their whole life. So they may not have bought or sold for 20 years. And the process has changed. Everything has changed. So they need to understand what happens in the listing process. I'm going to meet with you, and then what? When does the photographer come out? When does the lockbox go on? When does the sign go in the yard? When is it going to be online? When are people going to start showing? They need to know all of those next steps. And then every step you tell them the next ones, and then you tell them the next ones. Remember
the importance of having a listing packet, right? This is the pre-list packet that you get to drop off that goes through all these in step by step. I'm not expecting them to read it. I'm expecting to have this conversation and walk them through it. I also anticipate that when I leave on Sunday evening, they're going to open that up and thumb through it and go and look at some of the parts. So, man, just having those opportunities there for them again.
Yep.
Remember, this is about reformalizing our processes, right? Because over the last couple of years, we've been so busy and moving so fast, we just don't have this formality anymore.
Yep.
Can I chime in real quick on that?
Please do.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is, I think that you hit the nail right on the head with the packet. And a lot of people know that I'm big on the listing packet for sure, but I'll walk you through a scenario that just happened to me this morning. I got what I would consider a warm lead. I had a client call me and they're like, hey, just talk to somebody at the gas station who's going to sell. You better call him. This is a person I don't know. So I called the guy within an hour, called the guy, was like, hey, heard you're going to be selling your commercial property. Yeah. And so I'm trying to find a way to get that appointment, right? Because then I can deliver that value that you're talking about. Well, he's really not quite ready. It's going to be a couple weeks. I'm going to have the house appraised. Okay, boom, right there. There's an opportunity to say, okay, well, you can do that. But if you want for free, I will come out and provide you that information, similar information. Remember, we're not appraisers, but similar information for you. Oh, you know what? That would be great. Actually, could you come by on Saturday? I'm an off work on Saturday. Immediately. Got it. Got the appointment. And you bet I'm going to take my listing packet that Hope, thank goodness, Hope made up for us. Looks beautiful. And I have been being able to leave that with them. Like BJ said, they're going to thumb through it. You brought it to them. You left it there. It looks nice. It looks beautiful. And so while I'm not guaranteed to get the listing right, there's no guarantee, but at least I've increased that percentage chance I'm going to do that. So like you said, the scripts, finding a way to make that appointment and then being able to leave them with an item of value should hopefully make the listing happen.
It's the car book, right? When I go buy a new car, they still give me that big fancy picture book, right? And what do I do when I go home? I go thumb through it. I'm not getting on the website and looking at it. It's got the same information. It's just not the same. I can sit and watch TV and thumb through the book, and I'm reminded of it all the time.
Yeah. Two things on that. One, Max, we matched today. And two, he very easily, when that person was like, oh, I'm going to have it appraised, that could have just been okay, great. Well, I'll follow up with you. Or, you still could have created a follow-up, but instead you put yourself right in the middle of their process right now. And any opportunity to insert yourself right into the middle of where they're at in the process gives you the opportunity to add value immediately. So as soon as somebody tells you, well, just like we said, they may not know all about this process. That person probably thought they needed an appraisal. And so having the opportunity to educate them on like, hey, I can offer you something very similar to an appraisal at no cost. And this is what it is. And we can set up an appointment. They probably just didn't know that was an option. So often in these conversations, you have the opportunity to insert value. You might have to correct them on some information. It doesn't mean Max didn't offend this person by saying, hey, you really don't need to do that. It's just, hey, you can absolutely get an appraisal, or I can offer this to you and we can meet on Saturday. So don't be afraid to insert yourself right into the middle of wherever they're at in the process. You're coming with value. You're not, oftentimes I think people feel like that's when you get salesy. That's when you get aggressive. But really, he just saves this guy $500 because he doesn't need to do an appraisal right now. So we sometimes have to change our mindset that we're coming with a piece of value. We're not selling them anything. So, okay, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is how we can have confidence in our communication. We always get into those conversations where somebody says something and you kind of get put back on your heels and you fumble through it and you don't know what to say and you kind of get choked up. There were 5 things that I heard that I liked, that I've used these for a long time, that should be kind of normal things, hopefully, in the way that we communicate, that helps you maintain confidence even when you feel like the conversation has drifted. One of them is every time you talk to somebody, especially this person that like Max just met, every time he talks to them the next few times, he needs to remind them of his name and who he is. That seems very basic, but how often have you talked to somebody and they got off the phone and they were like, this realtor's super nice. No idea what their name is. It seems silly, but like when you're talking to people the first few times, you need to remind them of who you are. If you're texting with them, I save every single phone number in my phone as soon as I get the first piece of communication so that I know when you communicate with me. It is amazing to me the number of people that don't save contacts in their phone. So if you just start texting and communicating with them, they may be like, oh, sure, they're super nice, but now it feels weird to ask what their name is. So it seems silly. With those, until like you get through until you feel like you're in a relationship, when they answer the phone, they say, hey, BJ, how's it going? Remind them of your name. Express gratitude. Thank you for answering the phone. Thank you for meeting with me today. Acknowledge that they are taking time out of their schedule to build a relationship with you. Even if you're not showing them, or it wasn't they didn't do anything big, just, hey, thanks for taking a couple minutes to talk to me today. I'll send you all this information and we'll connect in another week. Express gratitude. Use their name. I am horrible with names, horrible. And it, like servers at a restaurant, it helps me when they introduce themselves, when they come to your table and say, hi, I'm BJ. I'm going to be taking care of you tonight. I try to always say, hi, BJ, how are you? And just saying their name helps me remember it. There's nothing worse than meeting somebody and then seeing them out and not remembering their names. So when you use their name back to them in a conversation, it feels more personal. When you're just meeting them and they're spilling their guts about why they need to buy or sell, and you can say, hey, BJ, I understand this must be really overwhelming right now. This is the first thing we're going to do. It just makes it that much more personal. So if you feel like the conversation is getting like it's gotten a little weird, bring it back, make it personal, say their name. And it seems like a small thing, but hopefully you guys can all think of a time when you met somebody and they used your name and it stuck with you. I have a couple of those.
I'm gonna work on that, Megan.
So weird. So weird. We already know each other. You forget my name at this point. We got problems. The reason for your call. If you have a listing, we're going to get into a market of price reductions and things like that. Don't call if you're calling a client with a reason. These aren't necessarily your care calls, or if it's a conversation, you need to go through an inspection report. You need to talk about a price reduction. You need to have a pretty direct conversation. You need to say that to them. Hey, the reason for my call today is we've had 6 showings. We've had no offers. All of the feedback is that the price is too high. We need to have a discussion about lowering the price of your home. There's no like, hey, yeah, I just ran through Starbucks, got my coffee. Yeah, how are you today? Oh, sun's shining. They're like at work thinking, why the heck are you calling me? What do you need? You're my agent, so you must have a reason. Just cut to the chase. Sometimes it's better to just go directly at the conversation you need than to have all of the small talk. Ask open-ended questions. It's really easy for us in conversation, especially when we're trying to figure out motivation, to ask yes or no questions. So reframe all of your questions to make them open-ended. And then the hardest thing for me, sit in the silence for a little while. You'd be amazed at how much people will talk if you'll just let there be silence. I can't stand it. So if you're asking me a question and it gets silent, I'm just going to keep on blabbing because I get super uncomfortable. So you're going to learn all about me real fast because I can't stand it.
Tell me more.
No. But keep those open-ended questions and then let them talk until you feel like they're really done with their thought, and then move on.
If you're not good at that, or you feel like maybe you're not good at that or something, who's the guy that we listened to at Mega Camp? Alex? Do you remember him? I'll look him up here in a
Phil.
second.
Phil.
Oh, man.
Exactly What to Say.
Exactly What to Say is the name of this book. That's what I was chasing. This book, Exactly What to Say, he really only covers 10 questions. Basically, he's framing 10 questions for you to ask in any conversation you're in, right? And that's really the basis of what this is. So it gives us the opportunity to shut up and to learn a little bit more about what's going on in other people's worlds.
If you haven't read that book, Exactly What to Say by Phil something.
I can't read it. Can you read it?
Phil M. Jones.
Phil M. Jones.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
If you do audibles, I did it on Audible and I think it was less than 2 hours. It's a really short book, but it is packed with just little nuggets of how to be a better communicator, how to be clear in your communication, how to have more valuable conversations. It is really, really good. So if you haven't read that, Exactly What to Say.
Phil M. Jones.
Yeah.
Questions? Everybody got it figured out now? That's a lot.
Right. The reason I wanted to talk about the intentionality behind our conversations today is, as the market changes, the quality of our conversations is going to be directly related to the success of our business. It is a skill that we just have not needed in the last few years that is going to come into play more and more over the next couple of years.
Yeah, this whole conversation has me thinking through my own habits also. And specifically the bad habits that I've kind of entered into over the last several years as it's been so busy. So now is the time to start building into those new habits. That's not easy. And it is the difference between being a successful agent in the next 18 months and being a borderline agent.
Yeah.
I think that's the hard part, is that time
Can she have the
blocking.
box? Tom, can she have the box?
I think that's the hard part, is time blocking that time to do that. Cause like right now I'm thinking, yeah, I could sit down 20 minutes, an hour, but I'm gonna leave here and I've got a million things today to do. tomorrow I got a million things to do. I already know my schedule. And so it's like finding that time, I think, for
Yeah.
me, to be honest. And it's what drives my business. So I've
I
gotta
agree.
do it.
And the risk is that we don't do it
Right.
until we have to do it. Right. And when we have to do it, generally that's desperation time. Right. And we've had some agents in this room that have been through that in the last 24 months. Right. It's not fun. So how do we get there? How do we get ahead of it? That's the goal.
If you start somewhere, if you feel like that, where you're just really busy and it seems hard to find time to go talk to your database like that, start with your pipeline now. Go through this LPT mama and go through all of your pipeline. It's just so weird. I wish it was something different, but go through that. And can you answer all of those questions about all of the people in your pipeline right now? Whether they're just the warm leads that are like, hey, sometime in the next 12 months, we'd like to buy or sell. You should still have an idea of what the answer to all those questions are. So that's a good place to start. If you just feel like you need to start with your pipeline right now and make sure that you have an understanding of where they're at and what's going to motivate them to write an offer or to put their house on the market, start there. And then just ease into it. 1 or 2 phone calls a day, or 1 or 2 text messages, 1 or 2 social media messages, wherever you feel like you need to start. Any other thoughts?
I think that's what, Tom, is that what you do? Is like your business this year is just like double, triple, but you're always in your office, and you're always working. So I think you do a really good job at that. Like, do you have a certain time that you do that all the time?
When you see me in the office.
Will you toss him the box?
I can't work.
Here.
I can't work. It's too hard for me. So I've got to be in the atmosphere that surrounding that I'm really working. And yeah, the last couple of years, I've been a phone jockey, coffee jockey, just taking these people to, to coffee and stuff like that. And it's paid off and it continues to pay off. Love on your database. Market good or market bad, love on your database. Top of mind awareness.
Anybody else have any thoughts? All right. Wants and needs then.
This is Tom. 3 o'clock today, I'm listing 28 Inglewood Lane in Hawthorne Commons. This is a ranch, 2+1 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, beautiful unit. It's an end unit. And so he's got a lot of privacy, a lot of big trees on that corner. It's got a deck, it's got a lower level patio, not quite a walkout, but so it's got 2 patios, completely updated. We're gonna be at 409.
Anybody else?
Dietz, and I'm looking for a new neighbor right next door to me. Yeah, 5-bed, 3.5 bath, remodeled kitchen during the pandemic, really nice house in Eagles Landing.
How much?
360, 365.
Marcy has a broker open today at 4 Inglewood, so right around the corner from Tom's new listing, from 11:30 to 1.
I'm listing a house right outside of Farmer City. It's like a block away from like Clinton Lake. I'm not quite sure how that all is over there, but it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath on over a 2-acre lot. And the garage is an oversized 2-car with a workshop on the back. And it's going to be $248-ish. It'll be on the market probably tomorrow.
Anybody else? All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.